The godly medicine was doing its best to dig its roots into the ground, and had not thought that anyone would have been able to suddenly break into the area sealed off by the aura field. Thus, it was completely caught unprepared by Ling Han, quickly pulling its roots out of the ground, ready to race off again. But this time it was one step too late. Though its movements were indeed very quick, and it had already removed its roots from the ground, Ling Han's hand also managed to grab onto its roots. Z! The godly medicine looked like it had experienced a huge fright. Even the flower that was blooming had instantly withdrawn all its petals, and even the stem was twisted and bent. But in the next instant, it suddenly started to struggle fiercely, and it actually flew out of his grasp. Shoo! It scrambled into the area sealed off by the aura field, and in mere moments had completely disappeared within the darkness. Ling Han was astounded. When he uncurled his fist and took a look, there were 3 torn-off roots left in his grip. There was a milky white liquid dripping from the torn-off ends of the roots, and all of a sudden, an indescribable, refreshing fragrance filled the air, making his whole body relax. It was as if he was about to become as light as a feather and ascend to heaven. This was the godly medicine. How could Ling Han dare to waste it? He quickly stuck out his tongue to suck and lick clean that milky white liquid. Any single drop wasted would be an unforgivable sin. It's invigorating, so damn invigorating. Just a whiff of this godly medicine was enough to make him feel light as a feather and ready to ascend to heaven. Swallowing the several drops of liquid made this feeling even stronger, as if all the pores of his body were completely open, and spiritual chi was automatically gushing in, nurturing his entire body. It was a feeling too amazing for mere words. His divine sense in particular had been greatly augmented, and his blood, flesh, nerves, and bones had all obtained a similar upgrade. His cultivation level, on the other hand, had increased the least. The value of the godly medicine is not in upgrading one's cultivation level. Ling Han thought. He expanded his divine sense and closely observed the changes taking place within his body. Vitality. This was the conclusion that he had come to. With the nurturing effects of the godly medicine, his body and its vitality had obtained a great upgrade. Any martial artist would know that a human being had a mere lifespan of about 100 years. Only if one managed to break through to flower blossom tier would they be able to break the restrictions of being mortal and gain another 200 years of life. Otherwise, even if they ate some kind of 1,000-year ginseng, it would only aid them in slowing down their aging process at most, and thus allow one to live for another few years. Why could a flower blossom tier martial artist obtain another 200 years of life? That was because the vitality within his body had been strengthened. After flower blossom tier, every breakthrough to a new tier would mean a new transformation, continuing to gain more and more life and vitality and continuously increasing one's lifespan. Most importantly, there was a lapse after heaven tier. Since a heaven tier martial artist could reach shattering void tier, then the longest lifespan of a martial artist was limited to 1,000 years. A godly medicine could achieve the same kind of effect. He had just swallowed a few drops of the godly fluid, and Ling Han's life and vitality had obtained a great upgrade. As someone who had once been a powerful warrior of heaven tier, he could make a rough estimate. He had roughly gained an extra 20 years of life. 20 years! Just a few drops. If he had managed to swallow the whole stalk of godly medicine, how many extra years of life would he have been able to get? 1,000 years. That was the lowest estimate. That was equivalent to a powerful warrior of heaven tier getting another lifetime to live. And for mortals, that would be another 10 lifetimes. What was the most valuable thing in this world? It was not cultivation technique, martial arts technique, or wealth. It was life. That was another extra 1,000 years of life. This would be enough to drive powerful martial artists of heaven tier crazy. Ling Han stored the 3 roots of the godly medicine into the spatial ring. Increasing lifespan was one of the effects of the godly medicine, and naturally was the greatest effect, but there were other uses for it. To reform the physical body and thoroughly clear away the impurities accumulated in one's body, he had a heaven-grade spirit base, but this did not mean that his body was also heaven-grade. On the other hand, he had a very normal body. However, after he had began cultivating the invincible heaven scroll, his physical body had ascended to the level of body of dead tree, and he was able to match those races with special constitution. In other words, his body was still very far from the level of perfection. At least there were still three different levels ahead of him: body of rock cliff, body of iron sheet, and body of diamond. Moreover, this was only the first level of the invincible heaven scroll. Godly medicine can help one to improve one's physical body. Who knows, I may be able to use it to achieve body of rock cliff. Ling Han's eyes lit up. If he managed to learn body of rock cliff, not only would his defenses be even stronger than before, he would also be able to condense another 2 drops of indestructible true fluid. He would then have altogether 3 drops, so he would have even more trump cards in hand. It's too bad. If I had an intact stock of godly medicine, I may be able to soar right up to body of iron sheet, or possibly even body of diamond. He could not help feeling very regretful, but he soon laughed in spite of himself. Then he said to himself, a man can't be too greedy. In my last life, I did not see even a level 9 treasure, and now, at the mere level of the 6th layer of element gathering tier, I not only saw a level 10 godly medicine, I have even obtained 3 of its roots. If I am still unsatisfied with this, then I really deserve to be struck by lightning. He cast his eyes at that corpse sitting in the center. He had a feeling that this was the source of everything. This corpse had obviously experienced a great battle. At least more than 100 of his bones had been shattered. It was very hard to imagine how he could have managed to continue fighting when he had had so many of his bones broken. Ling Han slowly approached and took a closer look at it, and could not help becoming astonished. There were actually multiple golden characters on these bones. However, perhaps too much time had passed, or perhaps this person was too heavily injured, for these characters have all practically dimmed. However, this did not hinder Ling Han from feeling the might of these golden characters. Rather than saying these were written characters, it would be more appropriate to say they were part of a design that illustrated the powers of nature and used these characters as a method of displaying them. Wait! Ling Han startled. The invincible heaven scroll is also like this, because I have no way to use mere words to recite it out. He came to a sudden understanding. No wonder he had needed 10,000 years just to comprehend the first level of cultivation technique. That was because it had far surpassed the level of mere words, and had reached a whole new level. However, although I have only taken one look, I can confirm that these golden characters on the bones are no match for the invincible heaven scroll. The complexity level of the two were completely different, but I can definitely conclude that this is the corpse of a powerful warrior of Shattering Void tier. If I am able to pry apart even a single shred of his martial intent, it would definitely be very beneficial to me when I break through to Shattering Void tier in the future. Ling Han said to himself. He widened his eyes, intending to memorize these golden characters. Hong, a red flame suddenly gushed out of the skeleton. It was dazzlingly bright, and there was a wave of heat that surged from it, causing Ling Han to take a few steps back. A red-colored flame floated above the skeleton and formed into various shapes, as if it had its own life. A strange fire! Ling Han gasped out in surprise. Strange fire was a very strange substance born from nature. It could also be described as a type of energy, and it was indescribably valuable to martial artists and alchemists alike. For once a martial artist refined the strange fire, he could refine his own physical body, raise his cultivation level, or even develop some fire-type martial arts technique. And if an alchemist fused with the strange fire, he would get a great advantage when concocting alchemical pills. Why? Because the most important thing in concocting alchemical pills was fire control. However, a martial artist had limited power, so the heat of the flames one could produce was extremely limited. But the strange fire could increase this limit by a considerable number of times and allow an alchemist to gain much more room to exercise his abilities. For example, for Ling Han, based on his ability, he could concoct alchemical pills as high as heaven grade. However, due to the limitations of his cultivation level, he could not do so because he was unable to produce flames with such a high level of heat to heat his alchemy furnace. But If he were to fuse with a strange fire, then while concocting heaven-grade alchemical pills would still be impossible, there was a great possibility that he would be able to concoct earth-grade alchemical pills. Even if it was not possible for him now, by the time he broke through to Gushing Spring Tier, he should be about able to. Instantly, his eyes lit up.